Hi everyone, it's Lauren. How are you? I hope you're well. I haven't made a video in quite a long time because I haven't really been reading, as you can tell by the title of this video. So I do have a bit of a wrap up for you. Some things that I read in August and some things I've read in the first half of September, but we're just amalgamating everything into a sort of recently read type review video instead. As you can see, I'm in my new house. It's been quite difficult to find a filming location which is attractive and has light. So, you know, it's a little bit makeshift at the moment, but it's fine. Things will improve and we will have a nice filming location at some point, I hope. I would love to know how your August has been, so do leave me a comment, let me know what you've been getting up to, what you've been reading. I hope you read more than I did in August, which was the grand total of 0 books. I did listen to a book. In fact, I didn't just listen to a book, I finished an audiobook that I had been listening to for a very long time. So I don't even know if that counts. But although August was only really 1 book strong for me, it was one of my favourite books that I have listened to, read all year, and I'm so pleased to have read it, and that was Black and British by David Olusoga. I would really recommend the audiobook for this if you like listening to non-fiction on audio, which is what I enjoy. I think history can sometimes be a little bit difficult to listen to. It definitely depends on the author and how they structure their history. I prefer history that's looks at the big picture but also tells the story via real people and smaller stories, smaller instances. That's how I like to consume history, that's how it makes sense to me, and that's how this book is structured. It's a look back at Britain's history with black people who have been born and raised in Britain throughout the centuries, and also Britain's relationship with Africa, with Sierra Leone in particular, naturally the slave trade and Britain's role in it is a big part of this book. I personally really appreciated that because we didn't really learn about it at school, and it gave me a really good understanding about how it started in general, the different characters, the different people involved, and also the push towards abolition and the different people who are involved in that in the UK and in the US. And that was fascinating, seeing different people's opinions, how some people could look at another human being and see another human being and really fight for their freedom and for them to be released, and then other people who'd be like, oh, I understand about slavery, but the thing is I make money from it, so probably can't change that. And it's just baffling. But the book also goes so much further than that. We start right back in Roman Britain and we find evidence of people who were Roman and British and also black and lived and died in this country, which is really fascinating. It also talks about how large the black population was in London during the Georgian period as a result normally of the slave trade, and some of the people in London were slaves in London. We always like to think that we didn't have slavery in this country, but we did. And then how that population fluctuated, how people assimilated with the local population, and we come right through to the 2 World Wars and how there was a difference in the First World War and the Second World War as to whether the British Army would actually allow the people that it colonised in the empire to fight for it, because they didn't want black people to be fighting an enemy that was white, and that was just not a thing they wanted to happen in Europe, as opposed to then the Second World War, when you had a lot of American GIs coming over to the UK, and the difference in British people's relationship with black people and the American relationship at the time where the South was still segregated, and straight up to Windrush generation. Like it covers everything. It's very comprehensive, and the skill in this book, I think, is to give us these specific people's stories. We learn about so many different characters, so many different people who had different experiences and different opinions on matters of race, and it really paints a clear picture that there was no one way that white people, for instance, in Britain, thought about black people throughout history. Like it waxed and waned. There were sometimes very nationalistic tendencies, and at other times there was very anti-slavery tendencies. And of course, even within those times, different people had different opinions. There was a lot of cognitive dissonance with people being like, oh, I like black people, but I still don't care about slavery. And the fact that slavery is happening, you know, in the US and we're getting all our cotton from there, yeah, that's fine. And it is the most human thing in the world to be flawed, to sometimes hold contrasting opinions at the same time. And this book does a great job of not having heroes and villains. It just paints everybody as who they were, flawed, complicated human beings. And I just think it was a fantastic read. I couldn't recommend it more. And then in September, I read 2 physical books and listened to 1 more audiobook. So the first physical book was The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, and I read this for my Patreon book club. And this was our read for August and September. So I won't review it here, but if you are interested in joining the Patreon book club, there is going to be a full, spoilery, big chat review of this book up there next week. So I'll leave the link in the description box below if you're interested in that. And the second book was it was difficult. I'm not sure. I did like it in the end, but it took me a long time to get into it. And that was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I've heard such amazing things about N.K. Jemisin and this cycle. I don't know what this trilogy is called, actually. But this came so highly recommended, and I was really excited to pick it up. I really felt that this was difficult to get into. It could have been just what was going on in my life at the time, moving house and having a lot on my mind. And this is quite... It just really hits you full in the face, I feel. So this is a world where every so often, every few centuries, there is a 5th season where perhaps a natural disaster occurs, the weather completely changes, the climate changes, and because of this, it is essentially an ending of a world, of a civilization. Lots of cities, lots of communities crumble during 5th seasons. Some empires fall, others rise. And there is a lot of history, a lot of lore, a lot of, I guess, culture that she's written for this world, which is really, impressive, but I found quite overwhelming right at the beginning. And within this context of regular earthquakes, there were also people called origines, I think is how you would pronounce it, who can control rock somehow. So they have some sort of power where they can cause earthquakes if they want, but they can also stop them, suppress them, and they can move molecules and use energy. I don't really know. I was quite lost on the science of what they do, but I suppose you don't necessarily need to understand it fully. And they are seen as a tolerated necessity in this society. They are often very feared because they do have the power to accidentally hurt people. If they don't use their powers correctly, they can kill people very easily. So there is a lot of second-class citizenship going on with these people, although they are extremely powerful and necessary, really, to control the environment that the society is living in. It took me a long while to get into it, as I said, definitely more than halfway through. It does read quite quickly, but there was just so much that I needed to understand about this world. And what's great is that she doesn't spoon-feed you. There's not very much exposition, but therefore I felt like, what is going on? I felt like I was really behind the characters understanding all the time. At various points, a character will ask a question or try and work out what's going on or get a new piece of information, and they'll say something like, or we'll get their internal voice saying something like, but why would he go over there? Because that's only if, oh, I see. And I'd be like, what do you see? I don't see. What has she worked out? I don't understand. And so I just felt so behind, and it really took a while before I got into it. And when I did get into it, I was like, yes, okay, I'm enjoying this now. But equally, because this is a series, I got to the end of the book and I was like, oh, this just whole thing felt like a beginning. I didn't really feel like we got anywhere. It just got interesting right at the end for me. So that was a bit of a shame, but it is a really interesting concept, like really different to anything else I've read. But then I don't read that much sci-fi fantasy, to be fair. And it's really inclusive as well in terms of races, genders, sexual identities. Like, that was really nice to read. So I really don't know where I stand about continuing this series. I would love to hear from you if you have read it, because I know lots of people have, lots of people love it. Let me know if it's worth it to continue. I feel like I want to know what's happening in the story, but also if I put it down now and never read any more again, I don't think I'd be upset about that. So let's see. And finally, the last audiobook I listened to was I Am Not Your Baby Mother by Candice Brathwaite. And I really enjoyed having this on audio, actually, because she reads it herself. And I think I like hearing that authenticity. I like hearing the author's voice, their accent, especially when, this is, for most part, an autobiography. So I really liked it coming from her. This is about Candice's experiences in motherhood, but specifically as a black mother and what that's like in the UK. She gives us a really interesting look at her upbringing, what her parenting situation was like with her mother and her grandparents, the difficulty she faced in her life as a teenager, but specifically a black female teenager, and being very overtly sexualized, and her kind of relationship with sex and sexual assault, and then her relationship with motherhood, with her partner later on, and what that experience was like for her, and how when we talk about mothers, especially online, like on the internet, this idea of motherhood, it's very middle class and it's very white and it's very able-bodied, and she wanted to change that for people. She wanted people to see different types of mothers. Overall, I really enjoyed hearing from her perspective, hearing about her experiences. She nearly died in childbirth, and most of that really is a result of racism, of people not taking her pain seriously, people not explaining to her what needed to happen. And it was so upsetting and frustrating to listen to that portion when she's telling people that she's not well, and they're just saying, oh, it's fine, that's normal, to the point where she nearly died. And it's just, to be that powerless and to not have people listen to you is ridiculous. And it is a fact that black mothers are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white mothers, which is just a ridiculous statistic, and it's frustrating to read or listen to. So I think just the more people that can hear about her experiences, the better. I have heard that it is on the curriculum in some places, like if you're at medical school or whatever, which I think is a fantastic step forward. So a bit of a light reading month and a half, to be honest. But you know, that's what happens in life sometimes. I feel like I'm back on the reading horse now. I did buy a lot of books recently, which I'm very excited to read, as I always am. So hopefully, the end of September, I'll have some more interesting books to talk to you about. Not that these weren't interesting, but I hope to have more numerous books to discuss with you. So as always, let me know if you've read any of these books. I'd love to hear your opinions on them. As I said, let me know what else you've been reading, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.